Look who's shown up on the panel.
I know. So we're now shifting gears. We're really excited. There was a lot of excitement. Yeah, there was I think half of one of our shows last week was talking not only about the what was announced by Frameio, but the quality of the event. Which a lot of us have concurred is the best virtual event ever. So just really really well done. I mean, as far as the keynote goes, it was just spot on. So I'd like to, of course, introduce Michael Cioni and Paul Saccone, from Frameio. It's super exciting to have you guys here. Thank you so much. We also have Paul Isaacs, who's been on the show before, but from Sound Devices. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So we wanted to have Paul able to contribute as needed. So welcome, Paul. Good to have you here.
Great to be here.
So Paul and Michael, can you tell us a story? Can you tell, how did this happen? Like, how did you get, what we're talking about is camera to cloud. Probably didn't happen in December. It's not like you guys had like, what are we going to do next year? Let's just throw it together. I think we can stream to Frameio. Well, first tell us what for the folks that are watching that don't know for the 10 people here that don't know what camera to cloud is, explain what camera to cloud does. And then the other thing we want to know is how you got here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alex. And thanks for everyone. Thanks for letting us join this morning. This is so exciting to be part of this. It's a privilege.
And Michael, if you just have a second, you're coming in a little loud. Do you think you can turn down just a little bit there? I probably should have said hi and gone back and forth.
A little bit
That's
better.
Great. That's perfect. That's perfect. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this is just a privilege to be here. And thanks for the compliment on the launch. Look, there are lots of people who have been doing the building blocks, the sort of foundation of the idea of camera to cloud. And if you don't know, camera to cloud is rolling takes of picture and sound and sending those assets right to the cloud so they can be instantly distributed. That's all it does. And when a lot of people see it, like your siblings or your family members, they go, we don't have that yet? Like, that's kind of how they look at it, which is a big clue to the idea that maybe we're not quite doing things right. You just had a great conversation about satellite technology. What we're doing with camera to cloud is taking the principles of satellite broadcast and applying it to cinema. That's really what we're doing here. And if you think about it, the cinema world has never had real-time experiences. And that's sort of what this is trying to trailblaze. The impetus of this, there are lots of people that have had ingredients and, like I said, foundational elements to this. And for the story that starts with me, this has been a 10-year journey. One of the movies that I worked on earlier in my career was the movie The Social Network. And I got to know the director, David Fincher, throughout that process. I went on to do 3 more features with him. And essentially, after we finished The Social Network, the iPad, this is 2010, comes out in October of 10. The iPad was still pretty new back then, right? And David says, why can't I just watch a take on my iPad right after we shoot it? I should just be able to start reviewing right then and there. And we're like, that's a good idea. So he challenged us to start building this concept. The birth of the camera to cloud in my life came from David Fincher's request of it. But at that time, AWS didn't exist. LTE was like this big in 2010. We didn't 802.11 wasn't producing the bandwidth and the expansive coverage that we have today. There were so many things missing that when we built it, I actually have a photo of me and David Fincher. I look like I'm in high school, and we basically are doing a demonstration, but it only works if everything is exactly correct. And as we all know, everything works in the lab, and as soon as you take it to a movie set, nothing works anymore. And that's when this technology would break down, because we didn't have AWS and LTE and better Wi-Fi and we didn't have wireless transmission in 2010 for video signals. You had to run SDI cables, and so there were umbilicals, right? All those things were factors. People didn't necessarily put SDI in the Hank data. There wasn't a universal understanding of trigger systems and file naming, right? Because in a broadcast world, there are no file names. So people putting in Hank didn't really necessarily have clip names to follow through. So all of a sudden you have these orphan clips. Well, how helpful is an orphan clip? Not really helpful if you can't backfill it to the original file. So these were all problems. Every 3 years, something in that problem list I mentioned got knocked off. right? AWS starts to become a business. LTE starts to become ubiquitous across the globe. Wi-Fi starts to get bigger and bigger bandwidth payloads, and it became more democratized across businesses and homes. And then wireless video became prevalent. File names inside of Hank metadata started to become more standardized. All these elements came together, and there was one missing piece, which was, where does it go? Who's going to take responsibility for the security, the TPN security, right? The SOC 2 Type 2 certifications that people who own content are going to require for media to be put in the cloud and instantly reviewed. And that's when, about 2.5 years ago, I started talking with Emery Wells, the CEO of Frameio. I had known him since probably 2007. And he started building this Frameio company, and they were essentially the best bet for being the repository of not just video and not just audio, but also all sorts of other files, because Frameio is designed to support many file types. You can basically put anything in Frameio and store it and use it. And many of those, including Photoshop docs, you can look at, TIFF, EXR, ProRes, MXF. You can see it in Frameio. It's not just an unsupported file type, right? You can actually interact with it. So what Emery decided to do is we teamed up together, and then Paul came in from a history of Apple and Blackmagic to help us with an incredible engineering team that really invented this process. And here's how I'll wrap up this sort of intro, Alex. What it comes down to is Frameio didn't actually invent anything just now. We didn't invent anything. The idea of shooting clips, transmitting file name and time code, triggers, MPEG-4, AVC, right? All that stuff exists. Similar to what Steve Jobs sort of announced in June of 07 when the iPhone was debuted, January of 07 when he debuted the iPhone. He didn't invent the phone. He didn't invent the internet. He didn't invent playing MP3s. He just put them together in a way that my mother could understand and utilize. Right? That's ultimately what we did. We spent the last 18 months taking all the components that many of you have been contributing to those infrastructures and ecosystems, and we just put them into a succinct, simple, integrated place so that it's automatic and it's background tasking. And that's what we did. And that's what's missing, because on a set, you can't worry about all these little problems. And producers don't want to worry about the security aspects and authorization and who's administrating this and who has access to what. Oh my gosh, right? Who can see this stuff? That is all the stuff that we made invisible. And one of the things, when the time is right, we want to do today is what you didn't see in our launch last week is the actual authorization process. And so today, what Paul and I are going to show you is the actual authorization process, because we believe the best technology is invisible and it's background tasking. It should be something you can self-teach. And we didn't demonstrate that in the video last week because when we shot that, it wasn't done. And now it's done. And the work that Paul Isaacs has done, and the work that Paul Isaacs' team at Sound Devices has done, and the teradek team is incredible. And so we actually want to show you live on camera from a total 0 point, no authentication, to actually sending clips. I'm going to show you how fast we can do that when the time's right.
The time's right. Let's do it. Let's everybody see it. I think the time is right now. So go. Yeah. So let's go ahead and okay. So look at that.
So what you're seeing right here is a teradek cube, and you've got a Sound Devices, and then I've got my iPhone here running Frameio. And Frameio has all my access to clips, but if I click on Cloud Devices, this little area says your project's empty. It's very lonely in here. So if you look at the teradek, it says, please sync with Frameio, because this is a Cube 655. It doesn't have an authentication. So I'm going to go into recording. And when I scroll down, I see Frameio, and I check the button pair. Frameio, the Cube gives us a code. It's a little small here, but you can see there's a code right there.
We can see it.
I hit sync device, I'm going to connect a new device, and it just leads me right to this point. So I have 875 and 264. And now it's going to call Frameio and it knows this is a cube. So I get a cube, I get a teradek logo here. And as soon as I hit authorize, it's going to ping the cube and watch the cube. It's going to give us a success. And now I have the option to either finish or add an expiration date where I could actually set this device to self-expire if I knew the termination date or the end date of the production. I can preset that up. So if you're a rental agent, you can actually set these to expire themselves when you know the production termination date. I hit finish. And once I hit finish, I now have a cube authenticated into my device. And if I go to the main screen here, it says Frameio is going to camera to cloud. I just made a project called camera to cloud, and that's ready to go. So before we get to sound, I'm just going to hit record here on my camera. You see the record trigger just started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to cut and watch carefully here. You're going to see the file name show up on the cube, and you're going to see the percentage. There it goes. It's uploading, and boom, it's done. And so we've uploaded that file. So if I go to my media pool, I'm going to hit refresh here, and I'll get today's date. I see a video file. There's the teradek cube. And here's the actual asset that we just shot. There's the file name in there. And if I click on it, I can play it back. You see the record trigger just started. 5, 4, 3.
That is incredible.
So that easy from scratch, we just set up video and rolled it right there. And we have file name, time code, and I have a scratch track of audio running into the 888. So I've got that. Okay, now let's go to sound. So I'm going to go back to cloud devices, and we're going to add a new device. And this is what Paul Isaac's team did. So if I go down to my files, I see there's a Frameio setup here. I click on Frameio setup. I'm going to hit enabled, and now sound devices is going to give me a code. So I hit authorize 442325. And when this calls back to the Frameio mainframe, it's going to know, oh, this is a sound devices. Actually, I could bring this more into focus. So I've got a sound devices item right here. It knows that. I'm going to hit authorize this device. Now, one thing that's really powerful here is I'm actually being a little obvious here, but this sound devices and this iPhone don't need to be next to each other. You can have the crew have no access to Frameio whatsoever. All they have to do is read that code to whoever's the administrator of the Frameio account. So they can be an administrator, not concerned about giving freelancers who they're never going to meet in person access to the account. They don't need to do that. So for ultimate security, you just read the 6-digit code, and then it's paired. And the sound devices operator is just completely a background task. They do their job as normal. They don't change a thing. So I hit OK, I hit finish. And now we've got a second device in our cloud devices setup here that is transmitting audio. So what I'm going to do is go to the sound devices here. I'm going to record now 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we hit cut. Now I decided to roll 6 channels of audio because why not? So here we're recording 6 channels of broadcast wave file audio. I go into my date. Notice it created an audio folder now. So as soon as the audio is recorded, it generated a new folder inside of there. Here is the sound devices device. If you had 5 sound devices recording, or you slaved together 6 Scorpios, you just have 6 folders in here. Each serial number would be independent. And then inside there, I have the take name and the wave file. So this is an uncompressed wave file playing back. Record now, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now we're going to take it one step further. What I'm going to do is I'm going to roll both sound and picture. So I'm going to roll camera, roll sound, 3, 2, 1. Cut. I'm going to cut picture and cut sound. And now I'm going to send it over to Paul Saccone if Paul can be made full screen, and he's going to get the file we just shot.
All right. Let me share my screen. Oh, I need permission to share my screen, please.
Mickey will take care of you. Should be just a second.
Got it.
You're good.
All right, so here we go. So I am in DaVinci Resolve, and you can see on the left-hand side, I've got my Frameio directory. I've got the folder where we were just working, C2C. cloud devices. There's all the folders with the different dates. Here's today's date. You can see that I've got the audio and the video folder that Michael has set up there. The first clip I brought in, here's the second clip that he just shot with Sync Sound. So I'm gonna add that to my project. And now I can start editing while he's still on set shooting things. So I go and I just throw this clip on the timeline. Also want to show you that the WAV file from the sound devices comes in with all of the channels. You can see them there on my system. So if I just drop them on my timeline, you get all those channels. I can go through, I can make an edit. Let's just say I'll do something really quick and I'm gonna punt it back to Michael. I'm just gonna desaturate the image. And then as I start to build my rough cut, I can start to send versions of that cut. So I'll just say rough cut V1, and we're gonna upload that back to Frameio. So now while they're on set, still shooting, they can start seeing how this is coming together from my perspective as an editor. So I'm gonna add that, and you'll watch on my screen as it renders, it's uploading in the top right, uploading 40, 50, 70, 80, 90%, it's up there now. So let's switch back to Michael so he can show you what that looks like on his side.
So the last part of this, oh, I'll need also screen sharing as well. Last part here. Yep, there we go. I can see now in Frameio, this is the material that Paul just uploaded. And so here's Paul's upload. Let's make sure that it was transcoding. Here it comes. So with sound. So he's got the desaturated piece fed back to me inside of Frameio. So I can see the piece that he just shot, and I can see the metadata from the sound devices. I'm getting all that material sent to me. I think you had some black at the end of your timeline, but yeah, here's our actual piece shining through. And then I also shot a bunch of other takes. While Paul was talking, I actually put in more takes. So if I go into the date and the video folder, here's other takes that I was just shooting and uploading in the background. So it's a background task process, which really essentially takes this whole, look, our whole world, we've been conditioned that in the movie making business, it's linear. Step 1 followed by step 2 and 3 and 4 and stuff like that. And it's this downloading and backup and shipping process that is a barrier between what's happening on set and who are the stakeholders offset. And we have to wait for the download, shipping, and backup process before the external stakeholders can really sink their teeth into this. We're not advocating that you stop downloading and backing up. I believe by the end of the, by the end of the decade, we will not have hard drives with OCF on them to transmit through hard drives and ship. That will go away by the end of the decade. But today, the best we can do is proxy files, time-coded proxy files. And at least we can let people who want to be interacting with footage be able to do that prior to receiving original camera files. So there's a backfill process that still needs to happen in this. This is a hybrid workflow because it's a hybrid cloud. There's a little bit of cloud with the camera to cloud side, but there's also a physical analog transfer of an asset over a Pelican case or something. That still has to happen. Over the next 10 years, we will reduce that process down to from a hybrid workflow to all virtual. There'll be no cards. Cameras by 2030 will not even have removable magazines. They will just have an internal cache in them, and they probably won't have any external magazines. That is probably where we'll be in a decade. So,
well, and the thing that's really important is that when you have that, I mean, one of the things that's very important anyway, as someone who shot on set a lot, what's really expensive is breaking down that set before you know that you have everything in the can. And so the issue is being able to have an editor with the animatics, with the storyboards in the timeline, taking your files as you're shooting them and just dropping them in and seeing how they cut together and saying, hey, before you cut the crew, do we have a half an hour before the next meal break? Can we shoot this one more time, or take this, get me one more angle here? The editor can be, that time when the editor was like, oh my gosh, I wish I just had this one shot, this close up of the hands, or this over the shoulder shot would have really sold that location. And that can happen because they're there. The editor now is there, putting that into the edit, seeing how everything cuts together, and creating that. Now, some of us have worked on shows that are pretty close to that, but they were $150 million films, $200 million films, and there was a huge crew that made that possible for us. So I've seen the future. It's been around in big houses for a while, using, big fiber networks and, all of that to make that work. But it's never been available to anyone who has a teradek and a sound devices and
in my kitchen. I wanted to do this in my kitchen kind of on purpose because it's ridiculous, It's ridiculous.
And because that kind of flexibility is more important for the independent filmmaker than it is for the big companies, because they need to be able to cost effectively be able to get a hold of this. And that's why I was so excited, when I found out about it, was that I was like, oh, this is what we, again, big companies have this for really, really big films, but do we have it for anybody? And now it's, and is there an additional cost for this, or is it just the same storage cost that you pay with Frameio?
That's part of our commitment to the community, and that we believe in democratization, which is, if you know me, this is something I've been passionate about for my whole career.
Right.
If you own a Frameio account, this is free. This is part of the Frameio account. The cheapest Frameio account is $15 a month. So it's very easy to get in to the system. And this feature, what I just did, is the whole thing, camera to cloud, is just part of the platform. And if you own a teradek 655, you're not going to be charged for the camera to cloud firmware by them. It's just firmware that'll be available later in March. And if you own a Sound Devices, Matt Anderson, the CEO, shared with me that you won't have to pay for the Sound Devices upgrade either. It'll just be part of owning the product. It's part of being in the product. And I want to do one more thing. If we can go back to Paul, I know there's some Sound Devices people on here, and we just want to show you that while we are using proxies to get the video through, obviously this is an 8K helium. I can't upload that media to the cloud yet. But the broadcast wave file. So if we can go back to Paul Saccone and share his screen, I want to know, Paul, if we can see the broadcast wave files.
Yeah, of course. So here I am. You can see on my timeline, I've got the wave files here. And if I just go and look at the metadata for this, clicking in the wrong spot. So we look at the file metadata. You can see that it is linear PCM 23976. It is the actual C2C T42A.wave file.
So we've got the whole, I did 6 channels or 7 channels there. And I just kind of mirrored my mic input across all the channels. But to give you a sense that this is an archive now, an instant backup of your work. And now the sound department doesn't have to be worried about chasing SD cards and where's my SD card? When do I do a film break in the middle of the day? All that stuff is just getting in the way of doing the job. And a lot of people are concerned about the archiving of it. And today we've just created, by just sending it to Frameio, there's already 3 copies of the audio. It's an uncompressed file. If the internet has an interrupt, it'll just retry the file. So it's not streaming it to the cloud. Even the Cube is not streaming it to the cloud. The Cube itself has an onboard SD card. So if you have no network interface, this will just store it locally, and then it will pass that up to the cloud once the media, once the network comes back. And the Sound Devices are the same. It's a background task you can keep working.
You can also see that I get all of the metadata associated with the file here. I can inspect that metadata in Resolve. And then if we look at the clip attributes, you'll actually see the names of each channel. So if your sound recorder has named their channels on set, which most do, you'll get that information carrying right through.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's and the, again, when we think about production, a lot of times, some of us that work on events have really, really long takes, but in production, there's a lot of time between all of these. So it uploading between every take means that you'll get that punch, to the clients. And again, one question I have to ask, and I think it's probably in here, but when can we use it? When does it come up?
So we haven't announced the official date, but I'll give you a hint. It's in March, and March is a 31-day month. So we're going to use it.
I can tell you, I could really use it by March 6th.
Well, okay. So,
Anyway.
what anyone here can do is sign up for the beta. If you sign up for the beta, you go to frame.io/C2C. And at the very bottom, kind of hidden at the bottom, is sign up for the beta. If you sign up for the beta, you go into a queue. Now we had like over 500 people sign up for the beta, but my email is michael@frame.io. If you email me after you sign up for the beta, I can bump you up the list.
We know somebody. We all know somebody on the inside.
I know somebody. So we can do that and give you priority. So if you're like, I need this March 6th and you have the tools to do it, then
I got all the tools. I got all the hardware to do this.
We can make that happen for you. Absolutely.
Awesome. Paul, you wanted to add, Paul Isaacs, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. So I was, on the subject of metadata, I always get very excited about metadata. I don't know why. But
Mickey's the audio engineer here, and he's like, yeah, I get excited too.
So Paul just showed all the metadata in Resolve there. And one comment I did want to make is that if the production sound mixer has to edit the metadata, which happens frequently on set due to various misinformation being passed around, any edit that is performed will cause a re-upload of the to Frameio, so that there will always be the latest sync.
And so it will replace the take. If you do the metadata, it will replace the file that Paul's working with,
original file is still there.
Got it. Okay.
I think Frameio and us are in discussions right now about how we want to manage that and whether we move older files to sort of like an archive folder or something like that. There's many different things we can do.
Right.
But yeah,
it's amazing. So you can, and that will take all that metadata. So if you're sitting there putting comments in, adding all those other bits and pieces, when it goes out, it's going to go out with all that data.
Absolutely. The Frameio is where the clever stuff is happening. We just embed all the metadata in the file and they extract that from XML and do what they need to do with it. So it's pretty cool.
We got a lot of questions lining up. Mickey, real quick, and then we'll jump to the questions.
That's actually a question that I asked in Makana. So it's answered now, metadata wise.
That's great. Let's go to the questions, Bill.
Okay, Sky Gleason from Seattle's in with the first one, and he says, we used to be in the same room as the client. Now for 10 years plus, I've used Dropbox, Vimeo, WeTransfer, and so forth to transfer large files for review and share media with virtual clients on iPhones. How does Frameio replace my old internet tools, and can I drop all that old stuff and move forward?
Great question, and the answer is 100% yes. The main reason why we do a better job than Dropbox and some of these other tools is that we support almost every type of file to look at it in the cloud. A lot of the tools you mentioned are transporters. They're just a courier. See, you don't want to make the recipient have to localize assets to comment or review and see them. And that's an unfortunate reality for a lot of those tools. So in Frameio, you can leave it in Frameio. You can look at a PDF. You can look at a PSD. You can look at an MXF. You can look at a ProRes, and you can mark it up in the cloud. And that allows it to stay in the cloud. Plus, we support a payload of 1 terabyte as a single file. So you can upload a single asset that is 1 terabyte. And we have a tool called Frameio Transfer. Transfer will allow you to upload up to a single terabyte file. And if you have an interrupt, if you literally close your computer, if you reboot your computer, it will pick up in the middle and push it from where it left off. So that is a huge difference for when you're dealing with big files. Nobody has this problem with a 1 gig file, but when you're dealing with 300 gigs, 600 gigs, you know that working from home, that is a tall order. And Frameio and Frameio Transfer make that not require you to like start over and reboot or retry from the beginning. So that's a huge upgrade from the other systems.
Well, Michael,
Hey, Michael,
I've followed you since you started back in with Gennardi and then just your career. You are a force of nature in this industry, and I'm grateful to see where you're going. So thank you for this advice, and
go ahead,
you're
Paul.
pulling it together.
Oh, we lost Paul.
So,
yeah, and you know what I'll say is, oh, there it is, Paul. You just jumped. When you put up your digital hand in the panel, it goes somewhere else. All right, go ahead, Paul.
so I was just going to add to what Michael was saying. Michael, do you want to show them the commenting so that you don't even have to transfer a file down to your computer?
Yeah, we'll do one quick last thing.
So, And while Michael's talking about that, I just want to say that, so the last project that we did with Frameio, we were uploading a terabyte of files every night, like just pushing, like the camera would come in and we would just push all of that up, the original files so that they could be downloaded and worked on. And, the thing is for me with Frameio is the fact that when I did a project for my parents my mom's still using a flip phone, they went in and were able to figure out how to add comments. But I can also do a huge project with all this big Braw and just push it all up there
on her flip phone. She was commenting on her flip phone.
She had to use her PC. So anyway, go ahead, Michael.
So what I've just done is made 3 notes in the cloud. So Paul gave me an export from Resolve. I just made 3 comments, including annotation. So here I say, nice phone. I point at it. Here I just ask generally, is it too desaturated? And here I point at the record button. So I'm going to let go of my screen. This is in the Frameio
Hey,
cloud.
don't let go yet. You got to refresh your screen because there's a V2 up there.
Oh, you did a V2. Oh,
yeah.
okey-doke.
So while Michael was chatting, I cut all of the new stuff that he shot into a timeline just so you could see how fast it was able to go.
Nice. Okay, let me just refresh here. Good call. So here we see
one of the things. Yeah, there it is.
And then if I play back the V2, I'll just mute the sound. I'll say, nice backlight. And if I gave Paul a note to like pull it down a little bit, I could do that. So there's a note there. Let's say too purple. And I'll point out, this area specifically is too purple. And then I'll do one more over here. I'll say too green. And I'll draw another arrow for this is just too green right there. So now I've made 3 notes on the edit Paul uploaded, and now I'll send it back to Paul.
All right, so let me just share my screen now. So Michael didn't need to download anything like he would from Dropbox or anything like that. All he did was comment in his system, and I should see notes appear here any second. Sometimes it takes a second or two based on the speed of the internet. But all of his annotations will come right onto my timeline in DaVinci Resolve. So I don't even have to leave my editor to see his comments and his feedback, and I can answer him in real time. And you see that we've got chat windows here, so I can leave an answer for him, and that would show up on his system. You might have a slow connection today, Michael. I'm not seeing them come in yet.
I got your note, so I don't know why it's not going backwards, but I actually have your note.
Here, you want to show mine then?
I see you. So I just wrote, I see you. Yeah. But your objective here is to see, here's Paul's note that he just wrote. So, and I can say, I see you, and send that back to Paul. So the idea is to get these little notes transfer back into Resolve. They transfer back into Final Cut. They transfer back into Premiere. There's even an Avid way to do it. If you're on Media Composer, I can actually click and download these files for Media Composer, and I actually get an XML for Media Composer that you can import and actually load the markers and direct notes for each frame-based comment into Media Composer using location markers. That's the Media Composer way of doing this. So these are all different techniques to get the material back and forth. And Camera to Cloud is really just the fastest way to start that process.
Right. It's amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney, and then we'll move on to the next question.
So when you make annotations, Michael, does it just send an annotation layer and a time code to position it, or is it re-encoding the video with the overlaid annotations to send them back to the editor?
Doesn't re-encode it. It just does it as a layer, and those are like little GIFs. And then in Paul's timeline, he gets there. So now you can see them appear in Paul's timeline. So I'll let Paul talk.
So they just showed up in my timeline. I guess there's a little internet lag today. So there's the arrow that he drew. These just come in as markers. There's no video that I have to import. They just appear in my timeline as I'm editing. He says it's too purple. I can write back, I like it, or I'll fix it in post. We have a real-time chat going back and forth. So now, Michael, why don't you answer so they can see that come in on my screen?
Yeah, if I go too purple, I like it, and I can say, fine, screw you. And there's the response, and there you
Boy,
go.
The pithy ones come back really fast. It's the regular comments that take a little time.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't ever have to leave my NLE. He doesn't have to download
Right.
anything from Dropbox. There's no emails back and forth. It's all just connected in real time, which is what makes it so great.
That's great. Next question.
Felipe Bias in Prague, Czech Republic says, any plans to support cameras other than cinema cameras or camera on camera to cloud? For example, a Sony A1 maybe?
Yeah, great camera. I would love to do that. You know, the CEO of Teradek, Nicol Verheim, who's been an entrepreneur his whole life, started the company in like 2008 or 9 and built Teradek. I remember when I first met Nicol, he had like 4 employees, all these South African amazing talents, and they just started building this stuff. And he's always told me good advice. One of his advice is you can't have a V2 until you release a V1. So our friend from Czech Republic, you totally have the right idea. We would love to support every camera under the sun, but we have to start somewhere. And we decided to start with cinema cameras because it's actually for 2 reasons. One, it's the hardest. If you can make a system robust for cinema, it will work for other people a lot easier because there's so many challenges in the cinema workflow. And 2, you get to establish rules because the cinema community will form standards, and even the cameras themselves that follow standards of SDI will help. One of the problems with a lot of other cameras in HDMI is not as well standardized and documented. People go all off the rails with HDMI, and it's much harder to support specific things that we're doing here over HDMI. So this is a process that we need to show other manufacturers what camera to cloud means so that they start innovating their product lines to be cognizant of a cloud-based workflow. Because until today, camera manufacturers never thought of it. Until Sound Devices, no one in audio thought about it. Sound Devices is one of the greatest partnerships because they thought of sending audio to the cloud. Paul thought about it 10 years ago. And then when we called Paul and said, Paul, it's time to go, he went nuts because he's like, it's finally time to send to the cloud. And the 8 series was being designed to do that. And, you know, they say luck favors the prepared. Well, Paul was engineering audio to cloud, and Frameio, he hadn't met us yet. And we met each other. And in that story, luck favors the prepared. Here we are with an integration that you saw just happen in front of you. So it's real.
That's great. Next question.
Ray Barchiner here in the panel says C2C is a game changer. Are there any plans for OCF into Frame in the near future?
So that is going to be on the camera side. So write to your senators, right? That's what you got to do. You got to call your camera manufacturer friends and you got to say, here's what you want to tell the camera manufacturers. You want to tell them a couple of things. One, we want H.265 and H.264 switchable to be captured in the camera. That's what you want, because the idea is you want to actually integrate everything inside the camera if you can. And today we have to record the proxy externally. There's a huge problem with that. Off speed. If you shoot slow motion, you're capturing the file in real time because slow motion is a post process in the camera, right? So you're only getting 24 or 25 or 30 when you capture that proxy file. Still has the first time code slot correct, still has the file name correct, but the duration's wrong. So that's a problem. And then if you want to have OCF go to the cloud.
And can you explain for the folks that don't know what OCF is, what OCF is?
Oh, that's the raw file, the original camera file. So your hero media is your high quality stuff, right? And then the proxy is what we can push to the internet today. To get OCF in the cloud, we need cameras to be able to think that way. That's not really a Frameio thing. We'll receive OCF today, but the camera's got to give it to us. And no one thought about what Paul and Sound Devices did with audio. No one has yet done in cameras. And they got to start engineering for high bandwidth transmissions of assets out of the camera. And that has yet to happen.
And it's pretty bad. I shoot a lot of, 6K and above. And so they're big files, so, and I think, and so I think that the H.264s are pretty good to get started with, especially when you can get the sound files. Next question.
David Brady in New York says, how does Frameio compare to Sony CI? We currently use the latter at work.
Sony CI is a great product. There's a lot of great tools out there. The biggest difference between what Sony CI and Frameio do is we are ubiquitous. Our integrations with Avid, Premiere, Final Cut, Resolve That's part of allowing people to choose the tool they would prefer. Our integrations over SDI with camera to cloud, we're not making it only work with Sony. I have a Red camera. This will work with Arri cameras. This will work with Panavision cameras. So there is, we are not like vertically integrated and fixing onto one workflow. Our business and my business, my mantra has been democratization. So I don't want to make it narrow. So we don't choose what systems you have to use. We want you to choose that. And that's a fundamental difference between us and C.
Next question.
Charles Klein in New York City, first of all, says, thank you for joining us, Michael, and I guess Paul's. Could you discuss your solution for HDR remote client review?
No. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Excellent. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather, our friend in the panel from Melbourne, Australia, says, for those of us who regard the cloud as a computer you have no control over, can the Frameio team speak to the security technology they've implemented to keep client media secure?
That's a great question, really. That's a good question. Who was that from?
That comes from Stuart Fairweather, who's on the panel from Melbourne,
Stuart.
Australia.
Thank you, Stuart. That's a great question. The good news about security is that there are third-party groups that govern it. So you can't self-secure. Sort of like when you sell a house, you can't be your own inspector, right? You can't do that. So it's the same principle. A third-party group needs to be able to do the inspection, and they need to have a set of rules that is agreed upon and shared across all the people. And it becomes a matter of public record. So that system basically is TPN certification. This is sort of an offshoot of the MPAA. And what essentially happens, if you go to Frameio/security, you can read about our security audits and how we've been approved by third-party security groups that the movie studios who have set the highest standards. In fact, there is this big fruit company that has some of the highest standards of all technological securities because of their vested interests. And even they subscribe to the TPN certification badge. And so Frameio's security is really published through other people that audit it. And we also pay hackers. We pay hackers to try to hack into Frameio. And anytime a hacker finds a vulnerable point, they receive a bonus. So they are financially motivated to tunnel into Frameio. And if they are able to ever do that, we're able to find that tunnel and close it off. And so that's another technique that is third party, where these are external people with securities and hack evaluation processes that prevent people from getting leaked. And I can tell you that over 1.5 million people are Frameio customers. There are dozens of petabytes of media in our cloud, and we have not had a security breach that has resulted in people's material being stolen. Normally what happens is people accidentally delete things they didn't mean to. That happens, unfortunately, a lot. And we even have a retrieval process because delete, as you know, isn't truly delete. So that's the number one security problem is
too much security.
People that break their own accounts, but TPN certification and SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, you can read about that. That is how we measure security in the cyberspace arena.
We're going to go to the next question. We're running. We got a lot of questions stacked up.
Mickey M, our favorite soundie who comes in every day from the Philippines, has a feature request for you. It would be great to be able to sync an entire Frameio project to local storage and vice versa. Any hope?
Syncing is very, very, very complicated. And so a bidirectional syncing process is extremely crazy. It's very hard, very, very difficult, and it's labor intensive. So syncing, no, that is not something on the immediate roadmap.
Next question.
Fair enough. Charles Klein in New York City says, Frameio's upload and download seem faster than their competitors. Can you discuss what the back-end magic is that's involved in transcoding for proxies? And I have to say, having used transfer, it's astonishing. It's so fast.
Thanks, Bill. The answer really is optimization for video. What most people do when they build transfer tools is they optimize it for all types of things. They try to say, what's every possible file? What we've done is built our block data to be in the smallest, basically to interpret what the video file is and optimize and be a hog of the internet for that file type. Uploading video is very different than uploading 50 TIFF files. And so what transfer does is it sort of anticipates that, and it's able to do a better job because it doesn't just throw one equation at any asset. It's much more intelligent, which gives you better performance. It's for pros. It's not Dropbox.
I will say that I kind of roll my eyes now if someone sends something other than Frame, because I have a 1 gig connection at work, so I know what 1 gig looks like. And Frameio, it doesn't do 1 gig, but it does like 940 megs a second.
Real close.
That's pretty much the outer edge of that. So it's amazing. And the other ones are like at 10, or 50 or something like that. Tiny. Next question
is from Mickey again in the Philippines. Regarding the Sound Devices 8 series integrations, what happens when you edit metadata on a take after the fact? Are the files Frameio updated? What about when you generate sound reports? Are those uploaded as well?
We'll let Paul take it.
Yeah, I think we actually already answered that question for Mickey just before, but just to reiterate, if metadata is edited, it requeues any file and uploads that. We did mention the fact that the existing original file still exists on the servers, and we're in discussion about what to do with those and how to manage those.
How does it name it if it does a second upload? So is it like 0.1, 0.2, or how does it annotate that?
Final.
Yeah, exactly. Generic final. Yeah.
Yeah, there's going to have to be some thought exactly on how the renamed file looks. I mean, what the eventual plan is to, as soon as you upload an updated file, the original file will be moved to something like an archive folder or something like that. So there'll be no duplicates at the project level.
Yeah, go ahead, Nikki.
What about the sound reports, which are usually generated at the end of the day?
Yes, so at the moment, it's a great question, and that is our plan to also get CSV files into the cloud as well, into the same project folder. But right now, you can actually just do a manual upload into the Frameio with a CSV. You just basically mount your 8 series to a computer or a phone and upload it directly to Frameio that way. But it will be handled automatically. As soon as you create that sound, the CSV sound report, it can appear in the same project folder in the cloud.
That's great. Next question.
John Preto is in from Las Vegas. Can you explain the wide area network connection you have in your kitchen from the teradek and your phone? Are you running back to Wi-Fi? Are you using 5G millimeter wave, or LTE?
Great question. So this is actually an ongoing discussion. So I am trying to find all the best solutions for this, and we don't have it down yet because I'm not a field networking expert. And if there's people on this call that can help with that, we're looking for advisors and consultants.
Yeah, we have some people.
The resumes will show up.
We want that. So again, Michael at frame.io. We need some advice on that. So I'm actually just using Time Warner, shitty internet. That's all I've got right now to make this work. But that's been fine. I've been at home now 11 months, and it's stable enough to work. And I only have 15 megabits up, but it's ample for what this is. On the set, we're using a lot of these hotspots. I've got hotspots that I've been buying all year long. The big ones from PepWave, I really like. Little ones like the Nighthawk. And then, these off-the-shelf ones like this. So we're sort of experimenting with all of them. Frameio wants to have a good understanding of good best practices, but it's not actually our role to produce a healthy network. We need to teach the production community what that entails. I think that's a huge opportunity. Sort of for those of you that remember what happened with DITs 15 years ago. If you understood the principles of digital cinema, you made a killing financially as a DIT from the years 2005 to 2013. I think the same process is going to happen with healthy networking on the set. People need experts to lead us through that because you cannot make a movie anymore without the internet.
Yeah, and even down to comms and everything else. I mean, you can use walkie-talkies, but a lot of people are starting to use all kinds of very advanced belt packs that, like, one of the things that we're dealing with is, file upload, but then there's also live viewing of, from the camera tap, from witness cameras, all that other thing that we're getting back into our master control. And then there's all the comms. So we have, cloud comms that are then tied into comms that are in whether they're ClearComm or Dante or whatever we're going to use, on set. And how does everybody have that conversation together? So you're right. It's a fast moving target. Next question.
Comes again from Raybar, who asks, for nonfiction work, what are the current take length limitations with camera to cloud, if any? Hour-long interviews or the time it takes to upload? Where do you run into problems?
So I mentioned I'm on Spectrum Internet. I have about 15 megabits up, maybe 18 when the kids aren't in school.
Ouch.
And essentially what I'm able to do is upload. I do many 7-hour takes just to make myself sleep better at night. Many 4, 5, 6, 7-hour takes. To give you an idea, if you have a 3 to 4 megabit, it's VBR GOP, but 3 to 4 megabit encoded hour, 1 hour interview on 15 megabits, that uploads and is playable in Frameio in under 5 minutes. So that is with LTE or Wi-Fi, 15 megabits up gets you, 25 times faster than real time with an HD review quality file that you could edit. So the H.264 codec really makes this pretty efficient, even in limited bandwidth situations.
Next question.
Kevin Murphy in Palm Desert, California is up next with your product announcement was amazing. Congratulations. Thank you for raising the bar. Any big risks that paid off and any that did not?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's a great question. I'll tell you this. I've released many products over the years. I've got several patents under my belt. I've released a lot of products and they don't all work. They don't all land. And I try to find the gut instinct for what is the response. Because when you're trying to be a futurist, you have to, that phrase, Gretzky, anticipate where the puck's going to be. And that's fun, but it's hard. And sometimes you get black eyes and bloody noses. What I expected from the community was 25% of the people looking at C2C would adopt it instantly, buy in and see it and love it. I figured 25% would absolutely hate it and 50% would be dubious. And it turns out from the data that we're able to capture through a lot of different ways, it turns out like 75% of people seem to really like it. And the haters are very small. In fact, I've seen private groups and chats and people have screenshot me where there's haters and all the people are like burying the haters and saying, no, you're not getting it. You're not missing it. They're doing our work for us. So the risk we took was to show a cinema workflow, to actually try to do it with a union crew. We wanted to show that union crew didn't have to change their normal workday because people don't like change. And union crews are so efficient. They have so many obligations. We don't want to add a new task that's going to be taxing on them. And so in order to do it, we actually hired a union crew to prove that out. And that was the biggest risk. And I think that paid off in that people realized it doesn't require them to change, and it's not a job killer. You still have to download, checksum, review. You have to do everything you did before. You're just letting someone offset participate. Well, where's the problem with that? Like that's a healthy thing. We're in a community where people want to participate. Obviously, there's somebody not on set that's supposed to receive this stuff. Give it to them faster. It's pretty basic, and so that was the risk, and I think the payoff that we're really pleased with. Thanks for the compliment.
Next question.
Mickey's back from the Philippines for SDI sources that are transporting multi-channel sound. Which channels are embedded in the proxy?
2. Right now, you can only embed 2 files if you do, you can only get a stereo pair in the teradek cube if you're running that through the camera. You'd have to use sound devices to get your polyphonic multi-channel situation.
Next question.
Lou Perez in Phoenix is in with during the transfer. Will Frameio use any compression for the transfers to help with data caps or metered connections? Also, is encryption in play there?
Encryption is absolutely in play. Everything's encrypted. You actually get an XX hash checksum when that material is actually finished in the cloud. So that data is there. You can parse that out and build a checksum database if you wanted to with our API. There's a lot of hooks you can do that. We do not compress the files further. When you give us a file, you decide the compression. So if you have spotty internet, you might want to make your video files 2.5 megabits, which is going to look okay. It's better than a Zoom call. It's going to look okay, but it's not going to be exceptional. That's going to be great. And then Sound Devices lets you compress the audio and make a AAC version. So you can record broadcast wave files on the device while simultaneously recording AAC, and you can select that Frameio only mirrors the AAC. So you get a time-coded file named multi-channel AAC file, which is going to be like 1 megabit for 10 seconds. Versus 1 megabit per second of wave. And you have a 2.5 megabit payload for video. So you could basically be at 3.5 megabits total and have picture and multi-channel sound going up. 3.5 up is actually pretty small, and that would actually work very, very well. So both those combos I just said would get you out of a poor networking scenario.
Next question.
Felipe's back from Prague with, are the files on the cube with the same exact length to the frame as the OCF? This would be important for relinking on most NLEs and especially Final Cut.
Great question, Felipe. Write your senators at Apple. We need Apple to be less rigid with relinking. Final Cut 7, as we all know, was very liberal with relinking. You had a lot of control. In Final Cut 10, they have reduced that control. So it's a little bit of a limiter. But I'll tell you, Felipe and everyone should know, the files you're capturing on the cube are not the exact same duration as raw files. The reason is it's a GOP. It's a group of pictures. It means it needs an A-frame to start the compression process. That A-frame has to come after the camera starts rolling. So the camera records, it takes up to a second for the cube to start its algorithm to start compressing those files. But the time code is going to be the same and the file name's the same. You can relink even in Final Cut. It does work. And we are publishing this on our website and our support documentation. You can relink files in Final Cut that do not have the same start and end moment. As long as they have the same time code and the same audio configuration and the same file name, you can relink those. So Final Cut actually has a way to do this. Premiere does this exceptionally well. Resolve does this. Avid is actually the worst one. Avid does not like relinking at all. And so it's not really a conform tool, as we all know. So Avid makes this a little bit harder, but Premiere, Final Cut, and Resolve all do this. And we just really want Final Cut. Premiere is the best. Premiere is the most flexible for relinking assets. Final Cut, Avid is the least flexible. So there's your spectrum. And Final Cut and Resolve are somewhere in the middle, but they all work.
Next question.
Mickey from the Philippines back with, when will Braw be playable in Frameio?
So we
Paul's
can't.
smiling.
The answer is actually more complicated. I'll make this really short. You're not really playing it back in Frameio because Frameio is not a native app. Frameio is a web app. So what you're actually asking without realizing it is you're asking Chrome to play Braw. And good luck with that. So essentially, what Frameio can do is display what some of these products and web tools can display. Now, if we were to transcode Braw to an H.265 or H.264, then you could play that. So we could make a proxy Blackmagic Raw. Today, Frameio does not debear in our back engine. We don't debear. So we don't take raw files and debear. The debearing cost, think about that. You have to upload Blackmagic Raw, and then I got to process all those frames for you and do all that. That's expensive because Blackmagic Raw is big. And so that's going to affect a whole cascade of problems with how much should this cost? How much Blackmagic Raw are you going to upload? Are you going to get a bill like a taxi meter every time you want your Blackmagic Raw transcoded? I got to bill you for it because I got to spin up a server and do it. And then there might be several million people doing that. That's money. So raw files are very, very hard to decode in the cloud. As you know, you can't name a product that can play back raw files in the cloud except for ColorFront. Those Hungarians are so good at what they're doing. They are breaking through. So if you're a ColorFront customer, you can actually start just barely, it's brand new, debearing in the cloud, but it is not inexpensive. And so be aware of that.
Next question.
From Mickey again, any love for the Sound Devices 833?
Paul.
Yeah, that's been a popular request, but obviously we need a device with Ethernet and a way to connect to the cloud. And the 833 does not have an Ethernet connector, so not possible.
Next question.
John Gerard in Berkeley. How long would it take to upload an Apple ProRes 1 terabyte file?
Well, that's going to be based on your upload speed. And so if you have a 100 megabit upload, that's going to take you 1,000 minutes. So there's it's going to be a slow grind. So 1 terabyte could take a while if you don't have a multi-gigabit upload connections. But here's the way to put a button on that is Frameio transfer, as Alex sort of said, is an internet hog. We will take 98% of the available bandwidth, which means we will ruin everybody else's day in your house. If you're using Frameio transfer, we ruin everybody's day. But that's what you want in a professional tool. This is a this is a GT40. It's not a Ford Fusion, right? And so there's no cup holder in the GT40, and Frameio transfer is not designed to be friendly to your Xbox. It's designed to hog.
We have a problem that in our office, we're doing post work, but we're also primarily a live streaming company. And so when we do post file, we had to keep the two off the network because we had one where we were in preparation to do a show, and I started doing uploads on Frameio, and it just shut the whole live stream down. Like everything was gone. Like we're on backup. You're like, what's going on? And they were like, yeah. So then I was like, oh, I was just throwing a couple files up there. And so it's an amazing. I mean, the transfer is amazingly fast. It's just, I look at it, I don't even know how that works. All right, next question.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I got a 750 gig file up in about an hour and 10 minutes. So it's fast. That's on a fiber line. Felipe is back from Prague with get the synced files and make an FCP XML that instead of being synced clips, they would be multicam clips. That's for cloud camera to cloud to get the synced files.
Yeah, so stay tuned for the end of the year when we can talk more about multicam.
Next question.
There you go. Felipe is back with, is Camera to Cloud going to export an FCP XML for the synced files?
No, that would happen on the Final Cut side, unless what am I missing there, Bill?
I don't know. It was a little hard to parse for me too. What he wrote, and it's Felipe. He's in the panel here.
Okay,
so.
at the moment you can export an FCP XML of the comments and bring them as markers on a compound clip on Final Cut. So since you're doing that sync already in the cloud, if you would be able to parse an XML of a synced file or a multicam file.
Paul Saccone.
I'm not sure that I'm understanding the question. You want to create an XML from within Frameio that can...
Yes, because since you already have all the data about the sync, the time code of both audio and video files, and create an XML to create that synced clip on Final Cut.
Okay.
Or a multicam.
Yes, you want them lined up in an XML so that Final Cut.
Yeah, basically, so I can download an XML and voila, I have the multicam that has that camera file and the audio files.
That's right. I see what you're saying. I would say that's not something we would probably deliver anytime soon. That's a very, very nice sort of automation, quick solution. Unfortunately, on the roadmap of things we're doing, that would be considered a low priority at this point. But I see it. I get it now. I get it.
Yeah, and I think, Felipe, most of the NLEs, I know Resolve and Premiere, I'm pretty sure Final Cut has an auto-align but via timecode command.
They do. It's just the batch thing. Like you have 100 takes.
The hard part is that Blackmagic has, of course, spoiled us with their ISO records, where it records a bunch of ISOs, it records program, and it gives you an XML. You just drop it in, and so everyone's just kind of used to. Well, it just works.
All right. Yeah. That's good.
All right. Next question.
And Felipe has another one in. Is the audio on the Cube the same configuration as the camera audio? On Final Cut, you need to have pretty much the same audio length, time code, and channels in order to be able to relink on Final Cut. We've actually already talked about this, haven't we?
Yeah, the simplest way is the proxy, the scratch track on your Cube is always going to be a 2-channel Cube. If you're going to relink, just make sure that you have the same, you're relinking video assets so that you can leave your audio, your separate system audio. That's a different thing. You're not relinking the audio, just relinking the video asset. And if that has audio in it, you got to maintain a scratch track in the original file to match the scratch track on the Cube. Or you can just do a group clip or a multicam clip and you're just relinking. You could just place the new video asset in there, because it's like a compound, and you could actually manually put it in a compound and mute the proxy. That would actually get you out of a jam too.
I do that for VFX turnovers, actually.
There you go.
Yep. Next question.
Kyle Hammond in Chicago. This is actually a pretty popular question, I bet. Does each stakeholder client need to have a paid Frameio account, or do you have one person to be the project lead and then give people the ability to input without a paid account?
Paul, you want to take that one?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
Sure. Kyle's asking, does each stakeholder or client need to have a paid Frameio account, or do you have one person to be the project lead and then give the other people the ability to input without a paid account?
So it depends on what you want the people within your account to be able to do. So it's all about the access level. So at the base level, it's $15 a user, and then it goes up from there. You can invite people as collaborators, which are free accounts, but their ability to do certain things within Frame is limited. So you just need to check the pricing page and the menu of options that you do get on those free versus paid accounts.
A free account, though, a person can make comments and watch assets, and they do not have to pay for Frameio.
Correct.
And
But
we
like
have
Paul
corporate
said,
users do that all the time.
yeah, once you start to get them into more interactive stuff, they're going to pay, but they do not have to be a paid customer just to view and comment.
Next question.
And our last one in the queue right now from Courtney Gooden in Hollywood and here on the panel. If you're shooting double system only, no sound in the video stream, does Frameio sync the BWF files to the video files in the video folder and encode a viewable MP4 for review?
It absolutely does. Now, this is in beta. So when we release this, we call it AV Sync. AV Sync is in beta. It reads the timecode of your BWF. It reads the timecode of your proxy file. It will then make a new folder called AV Sync, and it will transcode and mux the picture and sound. It will chop off the extra audio to match the video length, and then it will rename the video asset with the audio name, because generally you want to search by the name that comes from the audio, not a camera file name, which is confusing. All that's in our AV Sync beta. So when the product comes out, Camera to Cloud will be generally available, but AV Sync will then go into beta. So you could request a flag to include AV Sync, because there's so many weird situations of when, there's a lot of logic involved in making sync systems work automatically, which is why for the last 100 years, it's been manual. Basically, audio is manual. Even those of you that do an automatic sync in Sync and Link and things like that and Pluralize and stuff, that is still manual, right? Because you're sort of managing that process. We're trying to do it completely without any interaction from a person. So we have to do all the logic, and we have to do it after the second it happens. Like we can't wait to check a whole database of assets because the assets don't exist yet, right? So we're working on that logic, but it does work today. AV Sync is something we're so excited about because it's an actual cloud post process. And if you want to know where are we headed, what's going on in my head, where we're going, think post processing, right? Like where's the bow of my ship pointed? We want to become the lab. The lab is going to go to the cloud, right? And what's going to happen in the future is what we know of as post houses, that's going to start to go more towards the creative services bureau. The creative services value is going to be what a post house is. In the future, the utilitarian aspects of post houses, that is going to go away. That's going to go to the cloud. That's going to go to automation. And if you were to use an analogy, the utilitarian aspects, the way post houses make money, it's like popcorn at movie theaters. They don't make money off the movies. We know they make money off the popcorn. Post houses don't make money coloring movies. They make money making copies and downloading and uploading and transcoding. That's the popcorn. That's where the real money is. That's where the ROI is higher. That's going to go away. So if you work at post houses or post houses, they're going to have to start to figure out that they have to understand that stuff's going to become automatic and cannibalized. And as AI continues to get more and more ubiquitous and there's more talent to recruit for that, you're going to see more post processes become automated. So you won't need to employ people to do utilitarian things anymore. That's good for the creators because we just want it now. But it's bad for the facilities that employ people that have skills for decades. And we have to figure out what that means. And I'm not trying to be a job killer here. I'm just trying to evolve. I've always tried to evolve and just try to do the best thing. And you have to keep up. You have to pivot. You have to change your business model. If I were a post house, I would start focusing on creative services. Make your bureau, make your business, make your brand all about the stuff that is not demonstrable, right? That's the stuff a post house should really focus on. Everything else is going to become automatic. And if we're lucky, Frameio will become the post house in the sky.
That's awesome. It's a great way to close up the hour. Amazing. So not only have you had the best keynote that I've seen, ever. I think this might have been the best second hour that we've had. The demo was stunning. I was kind of worried about the demo. I have to admit that through 2 different people over Zoom without a lot of rehearsal, with us at least, I know that there was probably some rehearsal on your side because it was super clean and just such a pleasure to have you. And Paul Isaacs, it's great to see you. Paul Isaacs and I usually get to actually see each other in person a couple times a year. So we're
Alex, you say you were nervous. I was freaking shitting myself watching Michael do that demonstration because he's got an early alpha bit of code running on that machine right now. So yeah, credit to him for being brave enough to do that.
Well done, crushed Michael. It. Just crushed it. So and we're just so excited about Camera to Cloud. And of course, we're using, a lot of us are using Frameio. I'm using it completely. And so just super excited to have you. Hopefully, as we do new announcements, as you roll things out, we can persuade you to come back and hang out with us.
100%. 100%.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Paul. And thanks to everyone. Great panel today. Great discussion. Great attendees. Great questions. All in the first hour, second hour. Just it was a good day. So thanks to everyone. This doesn't get done without all of us. The attendees, the panelists, the guests. It's the most us show that I've ever worked on. So anyway, thank you all. We are going to jump to the post show next. So anyone who wants to go into the